Hello and welcome to episode number 101 of Weekend Review. My name is Sean, and on this week's show, we're talking about two of the best movies of the year in Waves and Honey Boy. We'll also take a look at this week's new releases, and I'll tell you about the streams happening over on twitch.tv/JonosaurusRex. These are my favorite kind of episodes to do because I get to come to you, the audience, with two things that I really enjoyed. The first of these is Waves, and this is an absolutely fantastic movie that I loved from beginning to end, that has terrific performances. Its story is engaging, it's engrossing, it's heartfelt, it is heart-wrenching, it is uplifting, it's all of these different things in one. The film also does something really interesting with the aspect ratio and the way it plays with it to push forward narrative thoughts and themes throughout the film that I found absolutely fascinating. It's something I'm going to talk about as I work my way through the film and talk about how much and why I like this movie as much as I do. It starts in a completely full frame that introduces us to Tyler and his family life. He has a girlfriend, he wrestles, seems like things are going pretty well. He has a mom that he seems to get along fairly well with. She's kind of the not easy is the wrong word, but kind of I guess the good cop side of things. Like, she's the more personable parental figure in his life. His dad, on the other hand, is a lot tougher, and though he does push Tyler to be the best that he can be in the things that he's undertaking, he helps his mom out with some of her work stuff in addition to the wrestling and doing the school stuff. When he pushes him to do his best, but he also has a short fuse, and it's hard to predict exactly A, what's going to set it off, and B, how much it's going to set him off, because it can be anything from like playful, cocky arm wrestling thing in a restaurant to like genuine anger and frustration and like a stern talking to with something that doesn't seem like that's like a level-headed response. He does make a couple of good points throughout the film, but he does make them in a way that to me was like, people aren't going to listen to this because you're kind of coming off as a bit of a jerk, and when you don't get the exact right response back to the information that you are giving, you get kind of annoyed in a way that makes people seem to want to close up around you. He also seems to treat pain as something that you just fight through, and this is an issue because Tyler has a little bit of a shoulder issue, and even though he goes through the proper channels to get it diagnosed, it seems that Tyler elects not to follow the doctor's orders and pushes himself because he doesn't want his dad to tell him to do it anyway. He just kind of goes along with it. When he doesn't take his doctor's advice, he pushes himself a little bit too hard, separates his shoulder, things go south with his girlfriend, and at some point, the aspect ratio of this movie changes. What was a completely full image now has black bars at the top and the bottom of the screen. It's so subtle that I didn't notice exactly when it kicked in because I wasn't paying attention, but I do remember sitting in the theater and I was sitting there going like, has it been in this widescreen format the whole time? Because I feel like I don't remember it being like it. Like, it was so subtly done and so well done where you don't notice it, but when you think back on it, you go like, oh my gosh, like when it shifts into this widescreen thing, it's to indicate that Tyler is not seeing the full picture and that he's so narrowly focused on these things that are going wrong, and he wants to just correct them. But he only wants them corrected in his specific way. When plans don't go according to how he wants them to go, we start to see the cracks in Tyler's character. He's presented as like a just normal teenage kid who's really good at wrestling, seems like he enjoys it, has a relationship with his family that feels very realistic and relatable to people who grew up at any point. He's, staying out late, hanging out with friends, he loves his girlfriend. All this stuff seems fine at the beginning, but as the cracks start to show, his character starts to break a little bit, and we get to see that he's not really a great listener, or he doesn't have the capacity or the words to articulate exactly how he's feeling. He just kind of starts yelling and hopes that that will fix the situation. After an argument with his girlfriend, she decides to leave, and this is when all the seams are just kind of coming apart all at once. He starts drinking really heavily, he's taking pain pills, he's doing drugs, and we see another side of him, which is a level of jealousy come out that all collides at one time to lead to a searingly intense sequence of events that I was visibly shaking in my chair during, because I don't know what lines people are willing to cross. Because we have the father who is a little hard to predict where that fuse is going to explode, and because of the way that Tyler can be unpredictable with how he reacts to people kind of reacting to him, it's really hard to figure out how far characters are going to go. So how much farther is he going to push his dad before his dad retaliates poorly? How much are the drinking and the drugs and the painkillers affecting his judgment, Tyler's judgment, before he does something really dumb? We don't know. And so when there's essentially a chase sequence where he has left the house and his dad is in pursuit, there is an unbelievable level of tension that just had me in my seat going like, I don't know what's going to happen and I don't feel like I'm going to like it. And my goodness, the event that happens is unbelievably shocking and surprising to the point where two people in the theater audibly gasped and I just sat there shaking in stunned silence like I couldn't believe what was going on. It is an incredible sequence, and the way it's done is so effective. And the moment that the event happens, the black bars that have been at the top and the bottom of the screen for the last chunk of time, I don't know the exact chunk because I didn't notice it in the first place, they rotate from the top and the bottom, and they rotate to the left and the right to indicate that shit has gone sideways and everything is a mess. It is fascinating to me, and I love it so much because I sat there and I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is just fascinating and incredible, and I love all of this. I also was worried that we got a bad print of the film, but as the movie progressed, we didn't actually get a bad print of the film, because if the bars rotated, why wouldn't the image rotate? It was a mental lapse in judgment, and I figured it out eventually. We carry on with Tyler for a little bit after the fallout of the climactic event, and after a little bit of that, we shift focus to his sister, and the film shows how she deals with the fallout from this climactic event. She understandably is very withdrawn from everyone. She has her earbuds in. She doesn't really talk to her parents. I think she only has like one full-on conversation in the back half of the film with one of her parents, and it's with her dad fishing, and it's a very well done, very emotionally raw scene that I enjoyed a lot. Enjoyed is a really weird word to put there, but it's very well done. It doesn't take very long before Lucas Hedges' character Luke shows up, which confused the hell out of me when I was trying to write my notes. I was like, Lucas Hedges played a character named Luke? That's really weird. He introduces himself to her. He was on the wrestling team with her brother, so he has an understanding of what's going on. He asks her if she wants to go get a cheeseburger with him. They hit it off, and we follow their relationship as they kind of grow together and fall for each other. After a while of following this relationship, the film rotates its black bars back to the top and the bottom of the screen to indicate that there's some sense of normalcy there, but she's still kind of locked in on this one particular event. What I like so much about the back half of this film was Emily having the opportunity to use her pain and the idea of, if I had just done something different, could I have prevented the climactic event from happening? Like, if I had just tweaked it just a little bit, how could I have helped? She gets to take that and apply it to someone that she cares about and help them reconcile with their past. That sounds kind of generic and honestly kind of cheesy, but what I loved so much about it was the idea that she's looking at it from one very specific perspective, where she's like, okay, if you don't do this, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. That's what's going to happen. But as the film progresses and as the situation unfolds in front of her, she has that moment where everything clicks, where she's like, I need to look at this through a different lens, because if I don't fix something with myself right now, I could be in this very same situation. And it's just, I love the way all of it connected and pieced together, and I think it's just so effective and wonderfully like heartfelt and uplifting, and I absolutely love this movie. After that moment of realization that Emily has, it finally goes back into that complete full frame aspect ratio of everybody seeing everything clearly, and it's so magnificent, and I love it very much. I have two very minor nitpicks about the film. There is some very dizzying camera work at the very beginning of the movie, where the camera is rotating in a clockwise manner in a very tight interior, in the interior of a car, and it's moving at a very fast pace, and I had to look away of I don't want to get motion sick, and I feel like that's a weird thing to say about a drama like this. There was also another part, this isn't relevant to probably most people, but because of the number of movies that I watch, you can see that there's a car in front of them, and it seemed like it was getting closer and closer, and I was like, oh god, we're not going to start this with just a heartbreaking car wreck. Oh, please, God, no, not the first. It's like 5 minutes. Give me some time here. You can't just hit me over the head like that. The clockwise shots happen a second time, pretty close to that, whereas another interior shot is a little hard to track where the characters are. It's hard to place your eyes and follow it around. It just, something about it, the speed of it feels a little bit quick. Fortunately, that's not really much of a problem past the, 15-minute mark. There's one more time where it does it to harken back to that first shot, but other than that, the rest of the film, looks totally fine. My other very minor nitpick with this is I wish there was more of a resolution with Sterling K. Brown's character. We get very clear resolution with Emily, the daughter, and the mom of the family. We clearly see them doing something to reconcile and deal with this situation that's been put in front of them. With Sterling K. Brown's character, we really only get him placing his hand on someone else's, but due to how integral he is to the problem at hand, I felt like I just needed a little bit more out of him, like some lines of dialogue of I hear you, or I understand, or something, just a little bit extra. I get what it's going for, and I'm assuming that he put his hand on her to acknowledge that sort of thing, but I think a very brief line of dialogue could have made that clearer and a little bit more effective. Neither of these things were film-breaking elements. They were just something that were in the back of my head when I was watching. I was like, oh man, this is really dizzying camera work, and I wish we had just a little bit more of a finale with Sterling K. Brown's character. Speaking of Sterling K. Brown, he's incredible. The entire cast is incredible. They are all just absolutely magnificent in their roles, and they're so good. Lucas Hedges continues to just be excellent in everything. The same with Sterling K. Brown. I would argue that he got overlooked from the Golden Globe nominations. He should have been nominated for supporting actor in a motion picture. He is just that good. He's so watchable and interesting, and I just love seeing him on screen. He is routinely fantastic in everything he's in, even in lesser stuff like Hotel Artemis. I'm a big fan of him, and I really would have liked to have seen him get nominated for this. I love this movie from start to finish. I think it's absolutely masterful in what it does. I love what it does with the aspect ratio of tweaking it to push things forward from a thematic standpoint, from a story standpoint. The performances are incredible. I love this movie, and it is absolutely one of the best movies of the year, and I highly encourage you to go see it. Second movie on this week's show is the much simpler and more straightforward Honey Boy, a movie that succeeds mostly on the strength of its performances from its cast. It's an autobiographical film that's based on Shia LaBeouf's own experiences both in his childhood, and it focuses on one particular stint in a rehab center after a drunken car crash puts him there. The film shifts its focus between 2005 and 1995. When the film shifts its focus back to 1995, it focuses mostly on the relationship between Shia LaBeouf, whose name in this movie is Otis, and his dad. The relationship isn't super great. It feels strained at best. When the film shifts its focus back to 1995, it focuses mostly on the relationship between Shia LaBeouf, whose name in this movie is Otis, and his dad. The relationship at best feels strained, and at worst is explosive between the two, where they yell and scream at each other. His dad has an incredibly short fuse, and he's very temperamental, and his fuse explodes a lot in ways that just don't really warrant that level of explosion. It's the simplest thing of somebody's making too much noise across the parking lot while they're trying to read lines for a movie, and he starts yelling at people. There's also a pretty high level of egotism and my way or the highway type of mentality that he just has to be the one in charge. At some point, Otis either doesn't want to be seen in public with his father, or he kind of recognizes, maybe my dad's not the greatest father figure in the world. And he joins the Big Brother Club to have someone that he can be in public with and not be embarrassed by. And because of his father's tendencies, he doesn't really want to be honest with this information because he knows that it's, in all likelihood, it's not going to go well. When Otis's father is able to kind of convince him that he won't lose his mind, even though we as an audience know this probably isn't going to go well, Otis has it in him to see the good in his father and to be like, okay, maybe this is the one time things go right. It's not terribly surprising when the answer is what we kind of expect it to be, but it still is an interesting look at this idea of I have a dad and he's kind of a pain, but I'm still trying my best to see the good in him, even though I understand that, like, I don't really want to be seen in public with him, and that interesting, like, internal struggle with Otis. Back in 2005, we deal with Lucas Hedges, who is terrific playing an older Otis who is dealing with his rehab stint. During this program, Otis is very angry and he's very frustrated. He doesn't really want to deal with any of this sort of stuff, and every conversation is a battle with him. And even when one of the counselors suggests that Otis just goes out into the woods and just screams at the ground and just yells, and it actually, like, helps him, when Otis goes back to tell that counselor that it actually was an effective thing for him to do, he's very sarcastic and, like, assy about it, in a way of, like, the counselor looks directly at him as like, are you being serious or are you joking? And he looks and he just goes, both. The film is largely this series of flashbacks back to 1995 that explore that relationship between him and his father, and why he probably went off that kind of beaten path, and why he is in the situation that he currently is in. He's a very difficult person to get into. He doesn't want to let anyone in. He doesn't want to talk about this stuff. He doesn't want to deal with it. But when he finally starts to kind of crack and break, and he finally starts to show some level of vulnerability, something clicks inside him, and that's what makes this movie so special. This movie is therapeutic, and it is cathartic in a way that I was not expecting. The final sequence of this movie and the final two lines are so unbelievably important to the rest of the film, and even outside of it, from the idea of he finally is looking at it and he finally figured out how he can best express himself to be able to move on from the situation. And it is literally this movie, Honey Boy. And that is just, it's so fascinating, because the final two lines in this movie are Otis talking to his dad saying, I'm going to make a film about you. And his dad replying with, you better make me, or I hope you make me look good, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing the last part. At first, I was kind of like, oh, what is that, like, really, how does that work within the context of all of this stuff? And as I walked out of the theater, like I so often do, and I talk about on this show, walking out of the theater, going to do whatever I'm doing, and walking around and letting it just kind of sink into my brain, it clicked of just how he was finally willing to show his dad how he viewed these situations, and he finally figured out how best to describe this stuff and how he can use his talents and what he knows to help himself in, like, the grand scheme of things. It probably sounds a little bit cheesy on the surface, and I understand that, because anytime it's like, oh, this, like, therapeutic or cathartic sort of thing starts to come into it, it can feel kind of ham-fisted, or it can feel a little predictable, or it can just feel like there's a level of, like, cheese to it. But everything in this film just feels so correct and feels so egoless. Like, he's telling it to the best of his abilities and to the most realistic of the situations that are presented. I think Honey Boy is an absolutely fantastic film. I think it's really interesting, and I like the format of how things are done in this particular film. I like the way it all ties together. I think the performances are strong. I like everything about it. I'm having a little bit of trouble pinpointing exactly what I like about it. It just feels like one of those movies where it's like, I just like everything about it, and it speaks to me in a very personal way. And I think that's hard to, or that can be really difficult to articulate in kind of a broad stroke, like, general, would you like it sort of review. Honey Boy is a fantastic film that is well worth your time. Finally, on this week's show, we'll take a look at the week's new releases. There are no games, there's nothing on Blu-ray, but there are a couple of movies coming out in theaters this week. Uncut Gems gets its wide release, and Spies in Disguise Spies in Disguise is the title of a movie, so Spies in Disguise is out as well. That is really, Spies in Disguise is out as well. Whew, that's a mouthful. As for the streams happening over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex, I don't know what they're going to be, but they're going to be Friday, Saturday, and Monday. Going to do a special birthday stream because my birthday is on Monday, December 30th. So come on by twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex. Stop by, say hi. It's going to be going for a very long time. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. I just don't have a super nailed down plan just yet. I have ideas, but I haven't put all the pieces in place. So if you're looking for something to do on Monday, come hang out in my stream, because it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a dumb, silly, goofy, good time. Is there a Napoleon Dynamite video game? There absolutely is. Did I buy a PlayStation Portable specifically for that joke? Yeah, I did. I sure did. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Week in Review. If you like the content, you can scroll on down and you can hit that subscribe button, and then you can click that little bell next to it, and then it'll notify you that some dork put up a new video. When you're done with that, though, scroll on down a little bit more and let me know what you thought of Waves or Honey Boy. If you saw either of those movies, go on over to twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex and check out the streams on Friday, Saturday, and Monday for the extra special birthday stream that's happening over there. And then be sure to check back every single week, hopefully on time, right here for more Week in Review. We'll see you next week at some point, hopefully Tuesday, but it could slide. See you next week.